So going to this, which I realize death is a complete mystery and we don't understand much about it, I want to ask you, Tom, because you have been involved, you've been one of the physicians, and I've met many people like you who've been involved with these cases where you've resuscitated and people have come back and told you what was going on.
Yes, I have a story from my very first day as a doctor. So you have to go way back to 1980. And I was lucky enough to be on call the first day as a doctor. It's kind of characterizes my entire medical career. I was appropriately nervous, and I had a second-year supervising resident, and he assured me, Tom, I'll be there the entire night. Don't worry, got your back. Just do the best you can. So about 3 in the morning, he comes to me and says, I'm awfully tired. I'm going to the call room. I'm going to go to sleep. Well, shortly after that, I got a call to the coronary care unit with a new patient. And I went up, I introduced myself, and my patient's eyes rolled up in the back of his head, and he flopped back down on the bed. Now, being pretty much a layperson, I knew that there were only 2 options. Either he had fainted, or my worst nightmare had occurred, and he had actually had a cardiac arrest right in front of me on my first day. And this fleeting thought went through my head of anger that my second-year resident had not done what he said he was going to do, which was supervise me and be there. However, I realized that this really was a cardiac arrest only because the entire nursing staff of the CCU was running to my room with terrified looks on their faces. So I jumped right in, I started CPR, and this was in the days where we didn't even know the cause of a heart attack, which is an occlusion of a blood vessel to the heart. And we simply allowed the heart attack to complete, kept the patient comfortable with morphine, and if they arrested and their heart stopped, we'd defibrillate them and attempt to bring them back. Started CPR, defibrillated, the code team eventually showed up. He got intubated and was very refractory, so he did not get a pulse back for at least 25 minutes. Shock, 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 shock. Finally, after 25 minutes, we got a pulse, and unfortunately, he continued to then have another cardiac arrest about every 5 minutes. Well, this went on for an hour. Every 5 minutes, he had to be shocked. Finally, the code team said, well, we can't stay here all day. You're the intern. Here, you shock him, okay? Give us a call if you need our help. And so everybody left, and I was again left alone with my new patient, and continued to shock him about everything.
And they were pretty sure he was going to die, right?
There
wasn't a lot of optimism.
Correct, yeah. Correct. The prognosis was not.
That's why they left.
So I continued to do this, and very thankfully, one shock and the pulse would come back. He'd be good for another 5 minutes. And then I had to do it again. Well, this went on all morning. I had a couple minutes in between shocks to run and talk to his wife, and honestly, I painted a very bleak picture with her. Came back just in time to shock him again. Then his lunch showed up, and he wasn't going to eat it. I didn't get breakfast. So I ate his lunch, okay? In between defibrillations. So about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he finally stabilized and had a very rocky hospital course, and finally was about to go home 30 days later. So on rounds, I went in to the room to say goodbye to him. And to my surprise, he said, please come in, shut the door, and sit down. We have to talk. And so I did, and I sat down and said, well, what can I help you with? He said, well, first of all, I know you're an intern, but you've spent the most time with me. All the rest of the people come in for 30 seconds every morning and leave, so I consider you my doctor, and I need your help with an experience that I had when I died. and I got to tell you about this, and I need your help to process it. I said, well, go ahead. He said, well, when I arrested, he said, I left my body, and I floated to the top of the ceiling, and I watched you, and you took this machine and you would shock it, and what I noticed is you would do that every time my heart monitor would get kind of sawtooth, and then it would come back to more normal, and you would repeatedly do that. He said, well, then you went out and talked to my wife, and frankly, I didn't think you were very positive in your discussion with her. You could have been more positive. He said, and then, if that wasn't bad enough, you ate my lunch. But then he said something that really got my attention. And he said, you know, the one thing, though, that I wanted to tell you was that here I was dying in front of you, and you were standing there feeling sorry for yourself because your senior resident didn't back you up and left you alone. That got my attention, and it got my attention because he told me what I thought. And to this day, I could rationalize anything else. I could rationalize the wife told him about my discussion, the nurses told him about the lunch, he saw a reflection in the window of his cardiac rhythm, but I cannot understand how he knew what I thought. And that got my attention. Well, I didn't know what this phenomenon was, and so I said, well, why don't you talk to your minister? Oh, I'm sorry. So in addition to this, he had a whole other very detailed experience. He had a complete life review, as you've talked about. He went down a tunnel toward the light. He had what I would characterize as a deceased family reunion. He talked with his grandfather, his grandmother, his mother's father. His pet dog was there that had died. He had talked with a being of light. He had some insights about both his life and his purpose in life, and was ultimately told that he needed to return. And he came back. And he wanted help with this. So I told him, I didn't know what this was at the time. And so I said, well, talk to your minister. And he said, well, I did. But I got halfway through my story, and he said, that's not in the Bible, walked out and slammed the door. So I said, well, I don't know what this was, but I'll try to find somebody who does. So I called our psychiatrist. And I got halfway through the story, and the psychiatrist said, this is ridiculous, and hung up on me. So that event got me very interested in this phenomenon, because the minister wasn't any help, the psychiatrist wasn't any help.
Sam was only like 10 years old, so you could.
And Tom Aufderheide wasn't any help. Okay. And it wasn't until I actually bumped into Dr. Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, that I recognized this phenomenon. And in fact, throughout my career, there have been a number of similar stories that resuscitated patients have shared.
I mean, it's really incredible because I mean,